Hello guys, this is my 6.3 video. In this video I'm going to teach you two important things. One is what is data modulation, and the 6.3 second video I'll explain you what is multiplexing. After completing these two video tutorials, you will get proper understanding what is signal modulation and multiplexing. Right? If you didn't watch about signals and their properties and the data transmission media, please watch my previous video which is related to 6.1 and 6.2. Right? This 6.3, the topic is investigate how digital data is encoded signal elements. The first of all, I'll tell you what is data modulation. Actually, the modulation is a word that is used with computer networks when they are directing signals to the transmission media. Then we know in our electronic devices, we stored all the things as digital data, but we cannot transmit digital data into one place without creating a signal. After creating a signal, we have to direct the signal into the transmission media. In there, that is very important to learn modulation techniques, right? So first one, the electronic waves must be used to transmit data between two places. Actually, we know we are transmitting electronic signals, but when you talk about fiber optics, in there we have to transmit light waves, but most of the time we are transmitting electronic waves, right? The transmission media are used to transmit electronic waves, and when we are directing signal into the transmission media, the modulation techniques are very important. That's why there are few methods to transmit or a direct signal into the transmission media, right? This process is called modulation. The simply it's like this. So I'll draw something for, to clear this idea. So here we have a computer. This is computer 1, right? You are sending some piece of data to the others. Think this is the transmission media. Right? In here we have another device or a computer 2. This is 1. Right? You are trying to send some piece of data one computer to other. We know we have to convert these digital data as signal. After creating signal, we are directing this signal into the transmission media. In here, it is better to know about the data modulation part. So I'll teach you, don't worry. Right? So here, what are the types of data modulation? Actually, basically, we have two types of signal. One is called digital signal. That means digital signals are created using digital data, zeros and ones. And the other one we have, it is called analog signal. Right? So when we talk about modulation techniques, we have to learn two things specially. One is called analog data modulation, and the other one is called digital data modulation. Under analog data modulation, we have some techniques and called FM, AM or a PM, like that. And under digital data modulation, we have some techniques that is called FSK or ASK and PSK. Then I will explain what are those things, right? So here I use this diagram to show these things under analog data modulation, so you can understand. In here we have three type of things, modulation things. One is called AM, and the other one is called FM, and the other one is called PM. Under digital modulation, you can see in here we have three things: ASKE and FSKE, and the third one PSK. I will explain one by one for you. Please concentrate, right? So if you don't have any idea about transmission media or signal properties, please watch my previous videos before you watch this video. If you watch those previous videos, then I think this video tutorial is very useful. I mean, so useful for you, right? So first of all, let's see what is analog data modulation, right? This is the method which is used to transmit analog data into the transmission media. There are three types. One is called amplitude modulation. The short form is used to represent that one is AM. And the second one is called frequency modulation. With analog signals, we use three modulation techniques. One is called amplitude modulation or AM, and the second one is frequency modulation or FM. Third one is called phase modulation or a PM, right? We are familiar when we are listening to the radio, we have two main channels called AM or FM. That's why those are familiar for us, AM, FM, right? Then we will learn what is AM. Describe amplitude modulation. So by looking at the below diagram, you can see three types of signals. One is called carrier signal or a transmission signal, and this is called analog signal, then which is used to convert the carrier signal and direct those things into the transmission media. So here, by changing the amplitude of the carrier signal, in here carrier signal is changed according to the amplitude of modulated signal. Here the places of high voltage, which is belongs to the second one, analog signal. By getting these things, then we have to increase the amplitude of the analog carrier signals according to the analog signal. These are the places which is equal to high voltage, then high voltage, and here also we have to increase the amplitude of the carrier signal, right? So then we can see some low voltage places. In there we are decreasing the amplitude of the carrier signal, and in here we have to decrease the amplitude of the signal. After modulating this signal, we can see this type of signal. This is transmitted through the transmission media, right? Then this is the shape of the signal, and that is called amplitude modulation, because in there we increases amplitude and we decreases amplitude. It depends on according to the analog signal. If you find any high voltage place, then you have to increase the amplitude. That is called AM. There are some advantages and disadvantages. Then let's see what are the advantages. Then this is so simple. That's why we can use simple circuits to create AM signals. And AM is very easy actually. Then there are some few disadvantages. Then I'll tell you one. So when we are transmitting or when we are directing signal into the transmission media, it may better affected by the external noises during transmission media, such as induced crosstalk or any other type of noise. It is affected for this type of signals. Then that is also the disadvantage. Let's move to the frequency modulation, or we can say that the FM is right. So here we had we have three type of signals in my diagram. It's carrier signal, as analog signal, and the modulating signal. Here we have to change the number of signals. We have to increase a number of signals, that means increase the frequency according to the analog signal. Here you can see, then you can get some idea. Then we can find the places which is equal to high voltage. Then here we have two things. In there you have to increase a number of circles. Increase the number of circles. If you have low voltage place, you have to decrease a number of circles. And if you have high voltage, then you have to increase the number of circles here. Right? So these are called FM, or a frequency modulation. After modulating the signal, you can see these are the places of high voltage which is equal analog signal, and these are the places of low voltage, and these type of signals or modulated signals we can call as FM. And there are some advantages and disadvantages. The clear sound is transmitted when we are using FM, because we can listen so many radio channels with the help of FM. We have some frequency levels. The noise from the external factors are reduced. The compare with the AM, this is reduced external factors, noise, and few disadvantages are there. For FM signals, when we have to use complex circuits, and that is why the cost is high compared with the others. That's all, guys. Let's move to the phase modulation, or a PM, that is belongs to the analog data modulation. Here we have three signals like you did in the previous part. In here, the phase of the carrier signal is modulated in order to reflect change voltage of analog signal, converting the wave into an angle of 108 degrees in locations where voltage of the transmitter wave is high. Here you can see the high voltage places in transmission signal or a transmission wave. Here we have to change, or we have to change the degree of that high voltage place angle as 180. And if you find any low voltage place, then you have to start it as 0. Then these are the places. If you have high voltage, then you have to start it like this. Then this is called phase modulation. It is so simple. This is the modulated signal, that is the third one, which is transmitted through the transmission media after you did the modulation part. Right. Next we finished analog data modulation, and we move to the digital data modulation. When we are transmitting digital signal to the transmission media, then we have to learn something. What are the technologies in their use? There are three type of things we have to do. This is the method which is used to transmit digital data to transmission media. There are three types, the baseband signal. The amplitude shift keying, that is the one, ASK is the short form, and the second one is a frequency shift keying, or a FSK, and the last one, the phase shift keying, or a PSK. Let's see one by one what are they. So in here you can learn something about amplitude shift keying. But when I ask a question from you, then how we did AM, or amplitude modulation for the analog signals. In there we have increases the amplitude of the signal, the places which is equal to high voltage. But in here we have another thing, we have digital signals. According to the digital signal, we have to create the modulated signal with the help of the analog signal. In here, the shape of the digital wave is sent to the transmission media. By decreasing the height of the carrier wave in places relevant to 0 pitch and increasing the height of the wave in places relevant to 1. then you can see some places. This is equal 1, this is equal 1, this is equal 1, this is equal 1, and this is equal 1. We have the analog signal like this. By mixing those two signals, if you find the places which is equal to 1, then you have to increase the height of the signal. If you find any place which is equal to the low voltage, that means 0, then you have to decrease the amplitude. And you can increase and decrease amplitude according to the high and low voltage. After creating that one, then we can create this type of modulated signal. And that is all. And another one is called frequency shift keying. Right? If you have some logic or a digital signal, the frequency of the analog carrier signal modified to reflect binary data, and that is the way that we can do with the FSK. Increasing the number of waves in places relevant to 1. Here you can see something which is cover of my photo. Here you can see the high voltage place. In there you have to increase a number of waves, that means increase the frequency of the signal, right, like this. And if you find low voltage places which is equal to 0, and in there what should you do? Then you have to decrease the number of waves, decrease the frequency. And that is a method that we can follow with the frequency shift keying. And lastly, we are going to learn about phase shift keying. Then we did something in PM or phase modulation for analog signals. Likewise, we have to learn something what we'll do with the digital data or digital signals. The phase of the original carrier signal is altered to reflect binary data. The places of voltage high, the transmission signal is converted to 108 degrees. Otherwise, it is converted for 0 degrees. Then look at this one. So here we have the carrier signal, and here we have the analog signal. And by mixing these two, then we can create a new wave. If you have high voltage in your carrier signal, then you have to change or you have to convert your signal as 108 degrees. Then if you find any low voltage places, you have to give the degrees as 0 there. Then this is the modulated signal. Right, thank you very much. Let's meet on my 6.3 second video. In there I will explain you the multiplexing part. That's why don't miss the video. If you didn't watch my previous videos, please watch one by one and join with this lesson series. That will help you to increase your advanced level marks for your paper. After completing this session, I hope to do some paper discussion with you. Join with me. Have a nice day.